Hey everyone, Mr. Russell here to talk to you about how to use trigonometry to solve for a missing angle measure. Okay, and that's all we're going to focus on in this video. So if you're looking at an example where x or a variable is one of the side lengths, please go back and watch the video called Using Trigonometry to Solve for Missing Side Length. Okay, so this example, you can see here that x is indeed in the angle, and that's what we're trying to solve for. So we're going to use the same steps. We're still going to go through the three steps to solve for x. Our first one being identifying what side lengths we have information for. You notice here that we have a side length of 10 and a side length of 27. So we want to identify exactly which lengths those are on this right triangle. First of all, we see that 10 is one of the legs of the right triangle. It's a leg because it's one of the sides that makes up that right angle. The question is, though, which leg is it? Is it the opposite leg or the adjacent leg? We notice that x is located right here, and 10 is the leg that's right next to that missing angle measure. So again, we're going to call that the adjacent leg. Adjacent always means next to. And 27 is the side length that's across the triangle from our right angle. So we know that's always called the hypotenuse. Okay, so now we go back to our trig functions, or the phrase SOHCAHTOA, and we ask ourselves which trig function uses the adjacent leg and the hypotenuse, and that's going to be cosine. So here we're going to set up this example by saying cosine of x, or cosine of the angle we're trying to solve for, is going to equal adjacent leg, which in this example is 10, over the hypotenuse, which in this example is 27. Okay, so now our next step is figuring out how to get x by itself. And we somehow, on the left-hand side of this equation, want to leave x here, but get rid of this cosine. Okay, so you think about any algebraic equation that we solve for. When we're looking to solve for a variable, we use things called inverse functions to get that variable by itself. So a quick little example, if we had x plus 3 equals 10, we get x by itself by subtracting 3 from both sides, because subtracting 3 is the opposite or the inverse of addition. Okay, if we had something that said x squared equals 16, well, how do we undo a square? Oh, we take the square root of both sides, right? Because the square root is the opposite or the inverse operation of squaring something. It's a very similar idea to the trigonometry that we're doing here. Okay, so there is an inverse function to our cosine, and we literally just call it the inverse cosine. If you were observant on your calculators at all, you may have noticed that there were the three sine functions with -1s kind of written, almost looking like an exponent. And that's exactly what those are. Those are called the inverse trig functions. So here, to undo our cosine, we're going to take the inverse cosine of both sides of our equation. So I'm going to take the inverse cosine of the left-hand side and the inverse cosine of the right-hand side. So then the inverse cosine cancels out the cosine. So those cancel out to leave us with just x. Now x is the inverse cosine of 10 over 27. Okay, so if you're using a scientific calculator, you're going to hit the second button first at the very top of your calculator, top left-hand corner, and then hit the cosine button, and what you'll see in your screen is it says cosine to the negative first, or inverse cosine. Okay, it automatically opens up a parenthesis for you. So we're going to type in just 10 divided by 27. Let's close up that parenthesis. And you should get 68.26. If you're using your phone calculator, again, you're going to open up your calculator app. You're going to turn it sideways to unveil all the buttons or put it in landscape mode. And your phone calculator also has a second button. It's not in the very top left-hand corner. It's one row below that, right below the open parenthesis. When you hit the second button, you'll notice that the sine, cosine, tangent buttons all turn into the inverse of those functions. So we're going to hit so we're first going to actually enter the fraction itself. So we're going to hit 10 over 27, and then hit second cosine. And then what you're going to see is you get 68.26. And that's what the angle equals. So x is going to be, around 10 nearest 10th, so 68.3. Again, on your phone, you're going to type in 10 over 27, hit equals, then hit second, hit the inverse cosine, and you'll see 68.3. Okay? And that's how you solve for a missing angle using trigonometry.